The orbit was true. True sun and true moon. The spectrum flowed steady. This world forgets itself. Compartmentalized. Each part working as one for so long that purpose became instinct, and instinct became worship. Motivation, consistency, perfection, but meaning was lost. The origins, the time, the why, the what, no longer asked. Contentment became creed. The now became eternity. Loyalty became law. All true, no matter the compartment. The royalty floating in their sky cities, the elite in their cityscapes above the cloud line, the middle class to the slums at the bottom. Each division separated by dense fog, or is it mist? Neither, it is steam. Steam is the interface here. Steam is memory. The pulse between elements, the interface of fission tech, the perfection of anatomy modifications, the language between machines and gods. It was perfected long ago, along with fire and pressure and faith, by a civilization now vaporized into myth. They were the first to carve the valves, to shape the arteries of the world through the mastery of water. They called their craft the worldship of steam, for to master steam is to master flow, current, pressure, and vibration. Worldship meant worship. To tend the pipes was to pray. To turn a valve was to genuflect. To balance pressure was to balance the soul. But no steam without fire, no fire without water, and no harmony without devotion. Within the flow, breathing in silence, not folded within itself, an infinite utopia, a resonance within the center, within the sanctums of steam. The Thermach priests keep the current. Their hands are hymns, their breath is calibration. They do not pray to the cathedral, they pray through it. For in this place, steam is divinity made visible. The cathedral is no church, it is a reactor of belief. Every piston sings its psalm, every chamber hums with devotion, every hiss of pressure is an act of praise. They say the world runs on the fission steam of yesterday. It does not. It runs on faith, compressed, heated, resonance, and released in perfect rhythm. And when they open the sacred valves, when their hymns ignite the pressure, the world exhales. The Thermach priests call this the Penthasanctum. From the transept arches to the vast lung of its dome, the whole edifice drew in and let out a measured sigh. Pipes like veins ran clear beneath the glass floors, carrying the flow in gentle pulses of Aeon. Brass ribs lifted and nested into lattices. Heat shimmered along their curves like a halo seen through tears. Steam whispered, condensed, and fell again as rain so fine it seemed the air wept with contentment. Naeon stood with both hands on the primary valve wheel, palms spread over hammered metal, the cold pressing into skin and bone. He matched his breathing to the cathedral's, inhaling for 8 counts, holding for 8, releasing for 8, an old discipline he had learned before he had words for counting. The wheel answered with a delicate give, 1 degree of ascent, and the lumen thread in the pipe beyond brightened, in time with his pulse. Beneath his sternum the breathline warmed, a faint vertical current of light that lived in him as the current lived through the world. "Flow steady," intoned the Thermach priests in their balconies. "Flow steady," the hydrochoristers answered from their galleries, voices slipping between glass rails like water through a comb, each note a precise angle within a circle no one had ever seen fully drawn. Naeon's voice joined, low enough to vibrate brass. Above, the choir's chords split into a finer shimmer, then returned to single pitch, obedient. Along the east aisle, the scripters marked pressure vectors on flexible metal scrolls. Their stylus tines left faint grooves that hummed as they cooled. He had grown within these rhythms. The cathedral's architecture lived in his body the way memory lives in a hand. The reach, the turn, the weight a wheel should offer when it is ready. The extra heartbeat a pipe gives back when it forgives a clumsy touch. Every curve had a name, every vent a prayer. The light had seasons, gold at dawn, pale white by midflow, a soft turquoise toward evening as the grove's breath thickened the air. The world was a circuit of trust. To be born here was to accept that trust as flesh. He bent to the secondary wheel, its face worn smooth by centuries of hands, and became aware of the faintest delay. Not a wrongness, not yet. A breath between breaths. The choristers held the note. The valves answered, almost, but not quite with the precision he knew. The flow reached the turn a fraction late, as if listening for something else. He turned the wheel a degree. Again the current came a hair on the far side of perfect. Naeon opened his attention through the body of the place, the way they taught the engine priests. Feel the aisles as ribs, the dome as diaphragm, the canals as gullies of lung. The cathedral's breath deepened. Gold tasted the air where heat kissed condensation. The choir's vowel opened, narrowed, opened. There. A single pulse, not blue, not heat white, but something between. A brightness that belonged to none of the recorded cycles, moving along the conduit beneath his feet like a fish turning in a shallow stream. It passed. His heart took an extra beat to follow.
Cadence 2, steady.
Declared from the clerestory, his voice ironed flat with certainty.
Steady.
Naeon answered with the others. He did not look down again. To look was to see was to doubt. He moved to the ring of smaller wheels, little organs, each in its own conversation with the choir.
The world is quiet when you trust it.
His mentor had said.
Doubt is a noise.
Across the nave, Mera stood among the Botan scribes, her vine-wrapped sash shedding leaf-like motes. She bent to read a petal's pulse, tapping its rhythm into her scroll with the soft click of metal on metal. An impulse rose in him to raise a hand toward her.
He let it pass. A priest's hands are public things within the cathedral. Private gestures did not belong here. Cadence 3, Orun called, and the hydro-choristers shifted modes.
Their voices became a river here, a narrow channel there, then a smooth plain of sound across which the flow raced. The Thermach priests along the southern balcony turned their wheels like rotated moons. The scripters kept their lines straight. Everything that could be measured was being measured. Naeon lifted his gaze. Above the oculus, light fell from no particular source. He loved that undecidability. To love it was to trust design. The Adamic ones who carved the first valves had loved it too, according to the epics. And the epics were to be accepted as they were sung, for what else is memory if not song? The pulse came again. Subtle but now unmistakable, a line of blue brightening within the conduit, not in gradient but in a skip, a child's footstep no one had authorized. It moved under the aisle, under the choir's platform, under the swaying garden leaves. The singing did not falter. The pressure did not fail. The measures held. His body answered in 2 languages at once. In the first,
Discipline, he did nothing.
in the second,
Something like recognition.
the breath line warmed. Orun's voice fell like a seal from above.
Cadence 3, steady. Steady.
Naeon said, and his voice did not betray him. He completed the circuit. He walked the glass aisle with calm, laying the weight of his giant frame lightly as a leaf. He accepted a scroll from a scripter, marked the vector where duty required, heard the stylus hum vanish into the larger tone, and moved to the auxiliary panel where the fine-tune valves lived. He turned one a fraction. The flow brightened with textbook docility. He turned another. The flow obeyed.
The third he did not touch. He waited, hand hovering open.
If the pulse wished to pass here again, it would. It did. A bright coin of blue hopped a seam, no more than the span of his fingertip, but its timing vibrated through him. Not too bright, not too hot. Only between the counts, as if it kept its own time. None of the choristers flinched. Mera tapped untroubled. The Botan scribes' vines made their quiet, rustling script. Why was he hearing this and not they? Because he was listening for it, the unallowable answer rose like heat. In that single free heartbeat, Naeon made the smallest transgression he could think to make. He slid his sleeve back, pressed his forearms biolight to the conduit, and listened without touching any wheel. He let his mantle fall, bowed toward the clerestory.
Pressure vector on line 7, within tolerance. Cadence 4. Good. Proceed to perimeter check. Yes.
He walked the outer arc. Light shifted toward white. The grove at the nave's edge sighed in its own language, leaves tilted to the hidden sun. At a humble floor valve set into living stone, so obedient that acolytes trained on it for comfort, he bent, touched brass, listened. The round of cadence 3 ended. A sanctioned rest fell like a cloth over a sleeping body. The flow spoke its usual language, pressure and light, and under it, a lighter thread, something testing its own name.
Naeon!
Oren called.
Report!
Steady.
Naeon answered, and brought the valve a degree toward noon. The pulse did not show itself again that morning. Only the echo remained in him. An extra space in the song, a place his body now left for a sound that had not yet learned to arrive where others could hear it. The cathedral's daily cycle continued, a long, ascending chant of work. The hydro choristers shaped air as if it were water. The water moved as if it listened. The thermach priests walked their paths like planets on rails. The Botan scribes tended the garden that grew within the nave itself, coils of vine threaded through brass, flowers exhaling a light mist that tasted of metal and nectar. Mid-flow, the entire world drew breath and held, the way a body holds between exertion and rest. Nobody spoke unless the work required it. Silence belonged to the structure. At the appointed bell, the acolytes entered for lessons. They stood in an orderly rank along the north aisle, small by the measure of giants and yet already bearing the quiet of future height. Their mantles were undecorated, their hands empty. A teaching priest showed them the lesser wheels. First with open palms.
This much is consent,
he told them. Then with 2 fingers, then with the gentlest back and forth touch. The children nodded, although they could not yet feel the nerve of the cathedral answering through metal. Naeon watched from the periphery. Among the young faces, one lifted toward him, curious. The child's eyes found his, and a private signal leapt there, something like a grin, trying to exist within solemnity. Naeon let the corner of his mouth move.
a blasphemy of a millimeter.
And the child stifled a laugh that carried into the metal scroll of the teacher's hand. The scroll hummed once in surprise. The teacher smiled without looking up from his demonstration. The pulse came. He did not startle. The training was deeper than muscle. His own eyes moved, and the coin of wrong lights slid away like a smoothed though under sermon. In the east transept, carved into the load-bearing pillar, stood an effigy that always caught Naeon's attention. The masked Riddler, a figure older than the doctrine. The mask's mouth was almost a smile. The children threw it furtive looks, as children always did. The elders ignored it the way one ignores a familiar creak in a holy floor. The eyes were cut into crescents that could be mirth or grief. No one knew which guild kept the effigy polished. Sometimes, in certain lights, its lips seemed parted a hair wider than yesterday. Orun descended from the clerestory for the midday instruction. He moved with the gravity of someone perfectly in rhythm with the world. His mantle, white and gold, fell in plaits like quiet water. He placed his palm to the central column, and the cathedral stilled a shade, listening to him as the children did.
Rings.
Orun said, and the word itself seemed to describe a shape in the air.
Speak them.
The acolytes recited root, flow, breath, light, harmony. Orun nodded.
Each ring serves the next. To know one's ring is to know purpose. To leave one's ring in thought or deed is to harm the whole.
He lifted his gaze as if through the dome.
We keep the world in balance because the world keeps us. If any ask for a reason, give them this. The reason is breath. Breath is given. We return it. Root, flow, breath, light, harmony.
He turned his face to the Botan scribes.
How fares the grove?
Mera, chosen to answer, bowed. We observe vigor, new growth on the inner vines, and the petals measure true. Her voice did not waver. Her hands were steady. Only Naeon, who had learned to read the lies a plant tells to keep from being uprooted, saw the small pause before her final word. He turned his attention to the choir at once, the way one turns away from a mirror whose angle has begun to reveal too much.
And the measures?
Oren asked. They confirm the hymn, she said. Flow constant, balance true.
Very good.
Oren said, and laid his hand to the column again. The cathedral answered with a warmth detectable only to those who waited for it.
We proceed to the second half of the day. Remember, in this work there is no self and other, only pressure and flow. Where we stand is the middle of all things. Where we stand, the acolytes repeated with quiet pride, is the middle of all things.
The lessons ended. The choir shifted to the long, even tone that suggested the afternoon had come to rest on top of the morning like a leaf on a pond. The children were led away along the conservative path behind the pillars, passing beneath the masked Riddler without looking. Naeon returned to the ring of minor wheels, carried now by muscle and prayer. He let the work wash him clean of everything that was not the work. In that clarity, there was the good fatigue that comes of having the correct weight in one's hands. He might have forgotten the pulse altogether if the pipe beneath the third wheel had not given a subtle shiver again, exactly between his breaths. The sliver of mirrored glass he had left adhered to the conduit still, catching nothing as far as any watching eye could see. His own eyes moved, and the coin of wrong light slid away like a smoothed thought under a sermon. Later, or what passed for later in a hall where time was measured by songs and warm air, Naeon climbed the narrow stairs to the high catwalk that ran along the dome's inner curvature. There, one could look down upon the entire cathedral and see it as a diagram, the rings of operation, the channels of light, the geometries of trust. He placed his palm on the thin rail and waited until the subtle tremors of his own heart ceased to imitate significance. The world's breath spoke up through brass. The breath in him learned its place. It would have been easy to let the day end in that easing. He was made for it, trained for it. The discipline felt like love and duty together. But love without curiosity, he had come to suspect, ended in imitation. And imitation produced the kind of beauty that disappears from the inside first.
You are far from your wheel for this hour.
Oren said from the stair behind him. Naeon turned and bowed, the correct depth.
The perimeter checks were completed, High Thermach. I came to look upon the whole.
Oren joined him at the rail. Up here, his mantle's gold seemed less like decoration and more like heat.
A rare honesty,
he said.
Few admit they come here for anything but the last breath before him.
Naeon said nothing. The dome's oculus gathered the light in such a way that if one chose, one could imagine a sky beyond, although to say so would have been foolish.
The world was complete. Root below, flow in the middle, breath in the halls, light here, harmony ringing them all.
Outside the rings there was not a word.
Today the flow was lively,
Oren said, as if they were considering a child with too much song in it. Naeon waited.
I made my reports as taught,
he answered at last.
And the grove?
Orun said, as if amending his own question.
Botan scribe Mera declared vigor,
Naeon said.
and she measured true.
Orun's mouth lifted in a fraction of a smile.
I said nothing of the words. I ask your seeing.
Naeon glanced down. Mera moved below across the garden's inner terrace, rubbing a leaf between forefinger and thumb, the motion so precise it was nearly a sigil.
The leaves drink,
He said carefully.
perhaps with a different thirst.
Orun hummed in his throat. The sound had the weight of a decision deferred.
We will sing the festival of pressure soon.
He said.
It steadies restless hearts and obedient waters. Before that day, I would see no improvisations at the wheels.
I understand.
Naeon said, and felt the breath he had not known he was holding free itself. The High Thermach's hand rested for an instant on his shoulder. Orun's palm was warm.
The world's work,
He said,
does not require extraordinary senses. It requires ordinary ones trained to faith.
Naeon bowed again, deeper. He wanted to ask,
What if faith is what hears the extra note?
but to form a question so nakedly would have broken something in the day that had not yet learned how to break. He let the question dissolve as one lets an unruly breath go.
Return to your station, Naeon.
Orun said, and descended the stairs with the quiet that made others quiet. Naeon remained at the rail for a count of 16, then 16 more, until the need to stand like a pillar passed. He descended to the aisles and resumed the familiar pilgrimage, wheel to wheel, valve to valve, the hymn returning to his throat almost without him. The flow steadied. The flow was steady. The flow would always be steady. Until the evening's soft hour, when the cathedral let go of the last chord and surrendered to the grove's slower song. He had one task left that was not on the scrolls. At a juncture that looked like a knot in the floor, where a minor conduit crossed under a larger channel and the glass thickened into a lens, he knelt and slid his fingers under the lip of living stone. The seam should have been smooth. It was. He pressed, and a small panel loosened, opening on a cavity scarcely wide enough for his hand. Inside lay an empty niche, smooth, dry, polished by the air itself. He placed there a second mirror leaf from his mantle's hidden fold. It clung with a soft click. When he drew back, the panel settled without a sound. The floor was itself again, honest, dumb, beautiful. If anyone had asked him why he did such a thing, he could have told a truth that was not the truth, that he admired the craftsmanship of the stone setters and wished to feel how well a hidden seam was cut. He might even have been believed. We are patient with one another's devotions. He stood. The cathedral exhaled. Day pressed its face against evening. Evening accepted it. The acolytes had gone to their studies. The choristers practiced the first measures of night. The botan scribes gathered their tools with the exactness of those who believe precision itself is a hymn. Naeon set his palm upon the nearest wheel and felt the machine's readiness meet his own. The dome took in breath. The flow moved as the flow had always moved. The pulse did not show itself again. He carried the day's rhythms back to his cell in the east wing, a chamber grown from glass stone, every wall laced with small, quiet channels. Here the flow felt farther away, as if modesty governed its passage near a sleeping place. He unfastened his mantle, folded it along the inlaid sigils, and placed it on the shelf beside the resting mat. When he sat, the shelf gave the exact degree a body longs for, the thoughtfulness of builders who measured living weight in their plans. He tried to still. He had been trained in stillness. The earliest lessons had taught him to sort noises by nearness to the heart. Leaf rustle, water thread, human breath, the crack of stone as it cooled, the little descending pitch a wheel makes when pressure leaves it. Within the net of those small sounds, stillness was not the absence of noise, but the recognition of pattern. Order was love that had learned its manners. Tonight, the pattern did not admit him easily. It left a place where something else might come. He lay on his side and recited the doctrine in low voice. Root, flow, breath, light, harmony. He drew the circle in his thoughts. Root as foundation, flow as middle, breath as song, light as sight, harmony as ring that held them. Outside the ring there was no word. He traced a circle smaller and smaller with his finger on the mat, until there was no distance left to trace. If he slept, it was the sleep inside counting. He saw himself beneath the dome and above the grove at the same time, the way the dome sometimes held both reflections. In the dream, a leaf turned its full face toward him with the calm of one who knows and is known. "We drink," it said without moving. "From what?" he asked, and woke with the taste of copper and rain in his mouth. The night bell had not rung. The air had the expectation of an answer. He dressed and went to the veranda that overlooked the inner terraces. The grove glowed faintly, biolight in a constellation of pale greens and softer blues. The conduits had dimmed the way eyes dim in sleep. The whole of it waited, like a held breath, as if the world had asked itself a question and had not yet decided to lie. He told himself he would walk only the first landing. He told himself the body moves better in morning when it has remembered night more intimately. He told himself he would not touch the water. And yet he took the spiral path down, and he went to the central basin, and he knelt. The stone was cool under his knees, warm near the water. The basin's surface was a sheet of dark glass, untroubled, gathering the last light that the grove exhaled. He lowered his hand toward it, stopped, lowered it further, stopped again, the way one enters a sacred sentence in parts. He placed his palm upon the water. Warmth spread upward, through skin, through muscle, through the place behind his ribs where the breath line kept faithful time. The surface trembled once, and for a moment he saw reflected there not his face, but a lattice of light, repeating and descending, as if pattern itself continued below the world, not down as such, but inward, into some depth that had nothing to do with distance. A voice, or something like one, spoke through pressure rather than sound. Remember what breathes below. He startled as if a hand had touched the back of his neck. The lattice lost its clarity. The grove stood as it had always stood, but the plants had turned minutely toward him the way sleepers turn toward a familiar footfall. He took his hand away and the water settled, but the recognition did not leave him. It had the quality of a word that exists in a language one knows and cannot translate. He lifted both hands, palms open, to show the world that he had not harmed it. The grove did not accuse. It listened. Naeon breathed until his breath fell back into the cathedral's measure that lived even here in the earth and glass. He rose and bowed, not to a person, but to the idea of consequence, and returned to his cell along the spiral path without touching another thing. By the time the dawn hymn began, he had washed and stood in his mantle as the discipline required. The east wall brightened along the secret veins. The first bell slid through stone like a slow spark. He set his hand to the latch of his door. There are mornings when the world places itself within a person with such precision that the person is no longer separate from the placing. This was such a morning. His steps took him by the masked riddler in the transept, and he did not linger. His eyes found the oculus, and he did not need it to be a window. His palms knew every wheel's mood and found them ready. The choristers began the hymn of water and fire. Their voices were the world's voice and his. The little leaves in the garden made the small sounds of patience. Orun's silhouette appeared in the high light. The acolytes stood with their empty hands, prepared to pretend for a year that emptiness was the same as readiness. Everything was as it had been, in the way that two waves that look the same are not. He took the primary wheel in both hands. He inhaled for 8, held for 8, released for 8. Beyond the glass under his feet, the flow brightened exactly on count. The stylus tines hummed. The world moved within the ring the doctrine described. And there, between his heartbeat and the counting 8, the pulse returned, small, bright, keeping its own time inside a perfection that had no place for other times. He did not turn his head. He did not change the angle of his palm. He did not allow his throat to close around the thought that rose, flickered, and fell back. The world is listening for itself.